Alright, welcome back to the channel, guys. I have another video on the old Camaro here. This is a 2010 SS, and today I'm going to be installing a cam from Raceproven Motorsports. I also got a new microphone for my videos, so hopefully they're going to sound a little bit better. I'm going to be trying to figure out how to, edit the audio, make it sound a little bit better, I guess. Because the old style, I'm just recording this with my phone, so the old style, I would have my right hand covering the microphone, so that didn't sound too good. But anyways, I have a new mic, so hopefully it sounds better to you guys. So these are the parts that Raceproven Motorsports sent to me. I also placed an order from BTR for a Trunnion upgrade and a few other small things. I'll leave all the links in the description so you guys can check them out, but yeah, I have a new oil pump, valve springs, the Trunnion upgrade, hardened push rods. I got the cam. Up front here we have the spark plugs, some gaskets that Raceproven sent to me. I got these from BTR. These are for the rocker studs. I'm 85% sure they're going to fit, but it was kind of hard to, they had a lot of options for the rocker studs, so hopefully those fit. If they don't, I'll just use my old ones until I get some upgraded ones. And I have the new cam set because aftermarket cams typically come with a 3-bolt design. So if you can see that right here. So the 3 bolts on the end of the cam sprocket. The factory has, I believe it's just 1 bolt. So Raceproven sent me a new cam gear set with the chain. This is the crank bolt. Actually, I don't know. I don't know why I have that. What is that for? Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm kind of stupid. The crank bolt we have to take out to put on the oil pump. And these crank bolts cannot be reused because once they're torqued, they stretch a little bit. So you want to replace these every time you take them out, I guess, and try and retorque them. And then I have just a couple of tools from BTR and other places. I have a cam handle, some stuff for the valve spring install, as well as this rubber line. This is for, so you put the one end of it into the spark plug hole, and then you pressurize it with air so the valves are standing all the way up. And yeah, I'll show you guys how to do that. I'm actually going to figure out how to do it myself because I've never done a cam install, but I've had a lot of experience with YouTube, so I'm pretty sure I can get this done without blowing my engine up. The only other thing I wanted to touch on was the lifters and lifter trays. So I read online that you don't have to replace them. I'm not going to lie, I completely forgot that that was a part of the valve train until my buddy said something to me. So luckily, they're not critical to replace. I didn't have the time to get them shipped here. And also, I'm pretty sure you have to take the heads off to replace those, and I don't really want to do that, so I'm just going to leave the stock ones in there, and this should be good to go. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start taking stuff off. So, obviously we got to take out the intake manifold, fuel lines, intake itself, the throttle body. I'm also going to take off the hood because I don't have my light here. It's still coming from Amazon, one of those under hood lights that stretch across the underside of the hood. So I'm just going to pop the hood right off, and I'm going to take off everything that I can. Spark plugs, coil packs. I'm going to drain the oil as well. The car's due for an oil change, so I'm going to drain the oil as well. I'm pretty sure you have to do that for the oil pump, but we'll figure it out. Alright, so I would consider this step 1 of taking the car apart. So I got the coil packs off, the spark plugs out, most of the wiring for this. This is the fuel injection harness, so it kind of has to stay on unless you want to take it all the way off the engine. This line also has to stay on both sides because it's attached in the back. It has some sort of ground or something back there. So that's going to be in the way. Again, these wires are for my 2-step box, so that's why this one's connected into here. I'm going to straighten this up eventually. I want to get some sort of connector plug for back here so I can just take out this whole harness. so those are going to stay. But I got the catch can out, whole intake's off, the throttle body's out, and I undid most of the wiring. So right now I'm draining the coolant because we got to take out a lot of this radiator section here. Got to take off the water pump. Tensioner, I'm pretty sure. I think the power steering is going to stay, but I can't remember. And then we're going to do the valve spring swap, but I'm not going to do that until I get the front side off. So I'll check back in when I get that done. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to show you guys how to get one of these guys off. So there's a protective boot on there, so you're going to go ahead and slide that back and then get your pick into here. Here's the view from the other side. I'm right next to the passenger wheel, so I'm going to get my pick up in here, put it right in this groove, and pull it down. See how that comes out? That's what you want. And then you get to sort of pull the whole thing out all the way around the bung here. Yep, just like that. Here's what the clip looks like. So you want to put your pick on this side of it, pull this part down, and then you can slide it under and pull the rest of it out all the way around the bung. So that's how you can remove a line like this, and this is probably going to go everywhere when I take it out. So that'll be fun. All right, here's the driver's side. So I'm going to get my pick into here. Okay, so after I pull that down, then I'll come in from the bottom. And pull it like that. Alright, here's a little update. We just got the radiator and the water pump all the way off. There's a couple bolts holding in the radiator. Let me see. Yeah, we got about 6 long bolts here. These are 12 millimeter holding on the water pump. So there's 3 around each, if this would focus, so there's 3 around each water gasket there, or water pump gasket I mean, and they come right off. We had to hit the water pump with a dead blow hammer just to loosen it up a little bit, and then coolant went everywhere. Coolant also went everywhere when I took the radiator out, even though we drained it. This big line here, we couldn't get the bottom of it off of the bung or the midsection, so we just took off both ends of the 1.5-inch part and just, threw it to the side. So that's pretty much out of the way. I recorded how to take off these transmission cooler lines on both sides, so don't forget you got to take those out before you can take your radiator off. And then there's 2 bolts up top, and then it just slides right up. So we're going to take out this section of line here for the AC, and then should be able to lift this passenger side up, slide the cam out. But before we do that, obviously we got to take off the front cover, we got to take that belt off, and yeah, that's all I got. Alright, so I just got the front cover off of the engine. I want to touch on 2 things, one being the harmonic balancer and the other is the cover here. So my balancer gave me a lot of problems. I slipped off the pull point back here a few times, so I have to get a new one of these because I don't know if this is in balance anymore. I'm assuming it's not, and it's always a good idea just to replace one of these if something bad happens to it. So I'm going to get a new one of these from AutoZone. It should be here tomorrow, which is going to be great. I think it's $120. Which kind of sucks, but it's better to be safe than sorry. It's chipped right down here, so it's not really in too good of a shape anymore. But I used the old Harbor Freight puller. It was $40, so I did try and pull it off here. Like I said, it slipped, so I ended up putting it on the back side here, and I was finally able to get it off. And I also had to machine down the crank bolt here. So whenever I got it almost off, it needed to go another 1/4 inch. I started to hit the flange on the crank bolt, so I had to machine that down so I could keep it on and keep using the puller to pull the crank all the way off. So I got that finished up, and now I have a universal LS crank pulling bolt, which is great. So for the timing cover, it was a bit of a challenge again. So you can see this alternator wire down here. There's a bolt in between the AC compressor and the wire, which has to come out, so you can push down on this wire here and take out the two bottom bolts right there, 1 and 2. So those two bolts are holding in the bottom part of the front timing cover, and then there are 6 bolts going around it. I also had to undo the alternator housing to get out this bottom corner bolt because it wasn't coming out for me. But I took out the 3 bolts there and then sort of just swung it out of the way so I can get off the cover. I'm going to have to take it out a little bit more because the gasket's being blocked there. I also got a new gasket from AutoZone. It was like $50, so it's better to just replace something like this. You know, you can see it's rusting a little bit down there. So that's not a great sign that's going to be holding up. So I ordered a new one of those. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull off some of this stuff. So I'm doing the fuel pump, timing set, a couple other things. And I got to get the valve covers off and finish up top as well. Okay, so I did some digging on how to get this oil pump off. And aside from, you know, dropping the subframe and the steering rack and all kinds of suspension parts, there was no other way to do this. So I figured I would just try something, and it looks like it's going to be working for me here. So I ended up dropping the oil pan about 1 inch here, all the way around there, and I'll show you guys how I did that. I'm just about to get the bolt off of the pickup tube for the oil pump, so I guess I'm recording this preemptively, but it looks like it'll be fine. I just got to work with it for a little bit to get it out. But anyways, these are the bolts. So these are for the oil pan. I had to use a couple of attachments to get the 2 towards the front of the car off, but the other ones came off just fine. These 2 bolts are on the back side. So they're very, very easy to get. They sort of go into the transmission. It's sort of hard to explain there, but so they're on the back side. And then these are the last 2 bolts. These are actually bell housing bolts. They're 15 millimeter. They also have to come out in order for you to drop the oil pan. And one more thing was, so I ended up taking out the driver's side cover, and then I undid the 1 bolt for the passenger side. It looks like the starter is holding the cover on, so I just undid the bolt so it could slide off, but the driver's side came all the way out. Alright, so good news. I was able to get the bolt out with dropping the oil pan a little bit. I just used a ratcheting wrench to undo it. Just please make sure you don't drop that bolt down in the oil pan. That will be a mess. But as you can see here, the oil pan's down a little bit on both sides, and that's just enough to get the bolt out. So I'm going to pull off the oil pump, and I'm going to show you guys how to prime it. Okay, so I realized in that last clip that I said I was going to show how to prime the new oil pump, but I realized I don't need to do that until the car is going back together. So I moved on to taking the cam out. Alright, so now what we're going to do is take the cam out here. So I have some 5/16 inch dowel rods. These are poplar, wooden rods. I picked them up from Lowe's for $1 a piece. They came in a 4-foot section. So I took 18 inches off of them. Just to show you, we have about, 10.5 inches, 11 inches. Well, yeah, 10.5 there, and 10.5 there. So those go all the way to the end of the block. So they hold our push rods off of the cam, so we can pull the cam out and the push rods don't fall in, and then we'd be screwed. We definitely have to take the heads off. This is how you're supposed to do it if you don't want to take the heads off. I'm pretty sure I have to take the intake manifold off, but I'm just waiting. I'm going to take off the valve covers now. Oh, just to touch on one more thing, I did replace the cam gear roller thing with the one that RPM gave me. So I swapped that guy out, and I took off the cam retainer plate. Those are T40 hex sockets. So there's 4 bolts there. Take that out, and then the cam should slide out after I do these 2 steps. So obviously the first one is putting in the wooden dowel rods, and the second one, you have to go up top to the rockers and back the rocker bolt all the way out. I'll show you whenever I'm done with one side. And then after that, you can pull the cam out. Then we're going to put the new cam in. We're going to make sure to lube it up, put it in, and then we can start swapping all the valve train stuff. I have to do the springs, push rods, new rocker studs. I'm keeping the old rockers, like I said, because I've checked on many forums. They should be good to go. And I also don't have $1 million to spend, so that's what we're working with here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the rocker studs or rocker bolts out, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so I got the valve covers off here, and this is what I meant by loose. We're talking you can pull the bolt right out there. That's so that they're not in the way of whenever we take out the cam and put the new one back in. So all of those are very loose, and now I'm going to go ahead and pull the cam out and then grease up the new one and slide it right in. Alright, here we are. Got the cam in, got the cam retainer plate on. It was pretty easy to slide that guy in. I used the cam handle from Brian Tooley Racing, so it went in really smooth. I got some assembly lube on there, and that was all good. Put the cam retainer plate on, and that was about it. The old cam was in pretty good shape. It wasn't scored or anything like that, so that's a great sign. And now I'm going to do the timing set, and I will show you guys how that's done. So if you can see on the crankshaft there's a little dimple. That dimple needs to be facing at the 12 o'clock position whenever you put your cam gear on. And then with the actual cam, there's a dimple at the top here that's supposed to be at the 6 o'clock position. So the cam gear is actually upside down right now. There we go. So I'm going to put it on like that. Then you're going to line your stub up from the camshaft to the cam gear on the right side there. And then we can put the bolts on. We're going to put some Loctite on those and torque them to 22 foot-pounds. Alright, there we go. Got the cam on. The gear is a little bit crooked right now because I took the crankshaft bolt out and it moved the crankshaft. But again, the dot on the crankshaft and the divot in the cam sprocket need to be lined up. So the cam sprocket is at 6 o'clock and the crankshaft is at 12 o'clock. So I torqued the cam sprocket bolts down to 22 foot-pounds, and then I installed the cam tensioner, I guess. I'm not sure what it will be called. And yeah, so now I'm ready to put the oil pump on, and I'll show you guys how to prime it and center it. Alright, so I got the oil pump on. So Melling's procedure is you're going to put the 4 bolts on the outside hand tight, and then turn the crankshaft 360 degrees. That will center up the gear inside of the oil pump. Then you can go ahead and torque down those 4 bolts to 18 foot-pounds, and then you can put on your pickup tube down at the bottom. And then after that, for the priming procedure, there's a bolt on the block. There's a bolt on the block right on the side here. I believe it's a T40. That is one of the oil plugs for the block. So Melling says to take off that plug, put a 3/8 inch inner diameter fuel hose into there, so sort of screwed in there so that it's watertight, and then pour 8 ounces of oil through a funnel into that hole, and that will fill up the oil pump. Now you want to pour it in real slow, and they said after 8 ounces is poured, wait 3 minutes, and then take off the fuel hose and torque the plug back on. I believe the torque spec for that is 44 foot-pounds, but I will put the torque specs in the description so you guys won't have to worry about that. So after that's done, I'm going to start the long process of putting the oil pan back together, torquing all those bolts down, getting everything snug, and then we can do the front cover and put the crank pulley on. Alright, so as I'm putting together this front end, I just want to show you guys how to do the front timing cover gasket. So all I did was use a 2-inch piece of pipe. Here's the pipe right here. Flip the cover around, put the 2-inch pipe on there, and tapped it out for the old gasket. Then to put the new one back in, I put some oil on it and turned the pipe sideways so that I could have it flush with this lip out here. So it's nice and in there now, and I'm going to throw that back on. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how to do the trunnion upgrade here. So the directions say to start with the flat side here facing up. This would be the round side. You can see there's two flat spots on this. You're going to put this in a 22mm socket, 1/2-inch drive. Then on the top you're going to take a 1/2-inch drive 13mm socket and press out the old bearing. It's going to look something like this. Now these are sort of a pain to get out. They crack and are very loud, but have no fear, that's how they're supposed to sound whenever they come out. Alright, so after you press out the old bearing, you're going to take one of these new bearings, letter side facing up, put one of the installation washers on top, and then you can press the bearing in so that it's flush with the flat part right here. Okay, after that's done, you can insert your trunnion. Sitting there like that. Then you're going to put it on top of the 22mm and press in another bearing. Again, letter side facing out. Just make sure you don't damage the trunnion whenever you press this in. The press that I'm using has a hole in it because this is just a drill press, so it's not going to hurt the trunnion whenever I press it all the way down. Okay, now it should look something like this. Then all we're going to do is put the washer on and the snap ring. Put the washer on there. And then I'm not going to be able to do this with one hand, so but the snap ring is going to go on here, both sides, and then you should be all finished. Here's the trunnion upgrade all done. These should spin fairly freely. And should be all set. Alright, now I'm going to show you guys how to do the valve springs for this. You'll have to forgive me, there's a bunch of wires in the way. I should have recorded the driver's side, but I was just experimenting on how to do them, so I'll show you guys how to do these. The first thing we're going to do is take our valve holder, insert it into the spark plug hole, and put some air to it. So this is going to hold the valves up so that whenever you take off the springs, they're going to be able to stay all the way at the top of the combustion chamber. Okay, now that we got the air hooked up, we're going to take our tool here and insert it into these two holes. The aluminum piece is going to go like this on the back. It's kind of hard to show with one hand, but you're going to have it like that. And that's going to go here. I'll show you what that looks like. Just for reference, the directions specifically say do not use an impact for any of this. I'm using an electric ratchet, so it's quick but not destructive. So now that I have this tied down, we're going to run this bolt all the way down and take out the valve spring holders here. One thing that's very important for this job is a little magnet. It helps with taking out these real small pieces. These can just go in the garbage, as well as the valve springs. After you take off the holders, you can remove the whole tool, pull off the spring, and we're going to take out the spring seat here with a pair of pliers. This is also garbage. It cannot be reused with the new springs. Now we're going to take our new pieces here and put them on. Put it down like that. And the cap's going to go on. Now Brian Tooley sells this tool to help you install these. It kind of works, it kind of doesn't, because let me set it up, I'll show you. So once you screw the eyelet in up there, you can put this piece on the bottom. And if you have room, you're supposed to put a screwdriver or something in here and use it to push down on this part. However, there's usually not enough room, so what I like to do is just use a dead blow hammer to tap this down gently. And then that's good to go. It's a bit quicker this way anyways. After that's done, we can take our valve spring, put the top on. These are one way. And then put them over the valve. Now for the final and hardest part, you have to take your retainer here and put them around the valve stem. So the hard part about this is you see how the valve springs are not centered around the valve stem. The retainers have to go all the way around the valve stem, so you have to use a pry bar or a screwdriver to sort of move the valve spring left and right, up and down to get them to fit. One tip that I have is make sure you're experimenting with pushing the spring up and down because that helps wiggle them in there. But this usually takes 5-10 minutes for 2 springs, so after you get these 4 in, the valve springs are finished. A good method I found for putting these in is centering the spring across the valve stem before you compress them. That way there's no pressure on the pry bar or screwdriver, whatever you're using, whenever you go and center them. Then you can put your retainers in and then let the pressure off. And then go to your next valve spring and do the same thing. Alright, so I got all the rockers torqued down. Everything's good to go. I'm going to put the valve covers back on. I just followed the instructions from ARP on how to do this, so I'm not going to go into detail of the instructions here. But you guys should be able to figure them out with the hardware that you get from ARP, because like I said, they give you instructions on that. One thing I just wanted to touch on real quick was make sure you put assembly lube on both ends of the push rods and also on the top of the valve stems before you put your rockers on. And that's all I got. So I'm going to throw the valve covers on and then work on the front of the engine. Okay, so I got the valve covers on and I'm ready to put the whole engine back together. So for the crank pulley, I rented a tool from AutoZone. It's this guy right here. This is what the inside looks like. And of course it didn't work. This thread was too long or too short. I can't remember. I was doing this last night, but it did not work. So I was reading some forums online and they said that you have to purchase an LS7 crank bolt. That is the easiest way to do it, but I didn't have that. So I made my own pulley installer here. I just used some washers and some spacers there, and I was able to get it on like that. So the reason you don't want to use your crank bolt to impact it on there is because the crank bolt isn't quite long enough to grab enough threads. I've heard many stories where people do that and then they rip the threads out of their crank and they're screwed. They got to take the whole engine apart. So the longer LS7 crank bolt is the right size for installing an LS3 crank pulley. I'm sure there's a specialized tool for doing it, but if you don't have either of those, you can also use the AutoZone one that I bought and sort of manufacture your own installer tool. Oh, and don't forget to put a little bit of anti-seize on the crank pulley just in case you have to take it off again. So I'm not going to record putting the engine back together. I think it's pretty straightforward. I'll give you a little rundown of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do the alternator first and then put the water pump on and then put my tensioners on. Then after that I will secure down the AC lines and put the radiator back in. Then I can do my serpentine belt and my AC belt. Then after that I'll hook up the coolant lines and I can do the coil packs and fuel lines. And then to finish it off I'll throw the throttle body on and the cold air intake. And then I'm going to put on the catch can last. And the only other thing I wanted to touch on was don't forget to replace your water pump gaskets and your thermostat. So make sure you have the 160 degrees thermostat. If you bought the kit from Race Proven Motorsports like I did, they gave you that thermostat. That's what they want you to run, so don't forget to put that in. But yeah, other than that, I will see you guys when it gets back together.